And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. We are back and reunited here after Todd and I had a weekend out on the West Coast. We'll tell you about that here in a minute after I tell you about our friends over at the First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every freedom-loving American. If you want to try it today, don't just do it because they share your values. In fact, don't do it for that reason at all. Because furthermore, if you're promoting our values, one of those things we're trying to conserve is meritocracy and excellence. So don't put a substandard, weak product out there with a flag and a Bible verse and think we're going to buy it. In fact, we're insulted. Buy it because it's great coffee and then because they share your values. All right, get a discount with my last name, Deace, as your offer code, your promo code at firstcup.com. That's firstcup.com. Use the promo code Deace. Again, firstcup.com, promo code Deace. Todd and I had a chance over the weekend to head out to Southern California. I want to thank Seth Gruber. He hosted a fantastic event with a lot of influencers there. Got a chance to meet Riley Gaines in person for the first time. So that was very cool. But the conference that he had out there was The Last Stand, and it was a phenomenal event. And they really did a great job, Seth and his team. And got to see and meet quite a lot of people. Got to see America's pastor, Jack Hibbs, once again. And also, it was just, it was really encouraging to be around a lot of people that truly do I know we haven't used this phrase that much this year, but, the last couple of years we were saying, hey, do you know what time it is on the right? It was good to be around a bunch of people who know what time it is. We had a chance to meet a lot of you, too. I mean, a lot of people that are fans of the show were there. People that came from all over the country. And there's a couple of individual shout outs I wanted to give. I met a sweet older woman who broke down in tears because she went to J6th and she lived in fear for 4 years that the feds were going to come and get her. And her charge to me was, listen, I know you love Dan Bongino. I know you're trying to give those guys a break, but people have to be punished for what they did to people like us. And you need to stay on them, she told me. There have got to be consequences for what the Biden administration did to this country over the last 4 years, which is going to tie into the big story we're going to talk about here in a few minutes as well. So I wanted to reiterate that, see, that's the kind of stuff that won't make me any friends. It might make it that there'll be fewer conferences I'll get invited to in the ensuing years, but she's right. And people do need to be punished. In fact, I can't think of a better day to reinstate our good friend Steve Friend, one of the heroic FBI whistleblowers. We're all concerned right now today after what happened in Iran over the weekend about sleeper cells. I watched more of Fox News programming on Sunday morning as we were getting ready to fly out. So, of course, you and I have to fly cross country the morning after we decide to decimate the number one military asset of the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So that was interesting. And then we get on the plane, and the guy running our gate at Southwest starts hooking up an external speaker. And we're like, what is this? And I kid you not, as we are boarding at 8 o'clock in the morning in Southern California, the morning after we blew Iran's nuclear program to smithereens, my man fires up Top Gun Danger Zone so that it can be heard as we are.
I feel the need.
Yes.
The need for speed.
Yes. I mean, the vibes were very strong, even at the Long Beach, California airport the morning after that. All right. But I can't think of a better time to reinstate people like Steve Friend than right now. Is there a shortage of truly heroic FBI agents that we need at this particular moment, given the concerns we have about Iranian sleeper cells all throughout the country? I would think we could use a man like Steve Friend maybe more than ever before, like right now.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, I love Dan. They have the power. They're the director and deputy director of the FBI. They could be reinstating these individuals. So if they know something about them that not even the Biden regime tried to prosecute, by all means, tell us what it is, and we'll say, okay, and move on. But so far, have they provided any of that information? No. And so it's time for the reckoning has to happen. It's not just good enough to be better than the worst people that we've ever seen. Hey, I'll take that. All right. We live in a fallen world. I'm not going to make the perfect the enemy of the good. Applaud Dan and Kash. They arrested, about 400 groomers and pornographers that all ought to be executed if convicted over the weekend, right? Which means the previous FBI probably knew where these people were. If Cash and Dan found them in 110 days, then the previous FBI probably knew where these people were, right?
Right.
And we're just leaving them there, right? Okay, so props to them for that. Well done, good and faithful servant, all right? So we can think multiple things here at once. This is clearly better than what we had before. But one day, okay, the Pharaoh who knows not Joseph is going to be in charge again here. And some examples need to be made, because one of the reasons we're all living in fear today of Iranian sleeper cells is because the previous president let over 1,500 Iranian nationals in the country just last year. About 20 foreign nationals pulled off 9/11, by the way. There has to be consequences. There has to be punishment, you know? And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm emotionally torn. So if this woman comes up, man, and gets right in my grill, but in a very feminine way, and challenges me, and you know what? I'm like, she's right. They've got to do better over there. They have to. We have to raise the standard over there, even on our friends. Maybe especially so. And then, is it Ryan in Denver?
Yes.
Ryan in Denver. I met your mama. All right? And she says you're a big fan of our show and that it's having a positive impact on you. We are very, very honored, brother, but that means now we got our eye on you, bro. All right? I know where your mom is. I got my eye on you. Don't slip. Your mom says you're in the race. Got to stay on the race. Stay on the path. Don't slip. All right? But in all seriousness, man, it's cool it was very cool to meet your mom. And to have her come forward and tell us what a big impact our show has had on you as you're learning what it means to be a man after God's own heart here as you're growing into that. So we're here for you. And I mean, you're one of the primary audiences in this country that we're trying to reach right now. So and while we're doing shout outs, can we give ourselves a shout out?
It depends.
Because after we left, I mean, we were already celebrating the fact, before we left for LA, we were already celebrating the fact that we were, for the very first time, and you should have seen the looks on the faces of Seth Gruber's audience when I went out there and announced I'm an LGBTQ best-selling author, and half the people in the room didn't know who I was, like, how did this guy get in? Okay? All right, then they figured out what the gag was later. All right? But folks, we're now not just LGBTQ best-selling authors. Richie Meets the Rainbow is now a national bestseller. It remains the #1 new release children's book in America as of this morning on Amazon. The #1 book retailer. Over 80% of all books bought and sold in America every day are via Amazon. We reached a top 100 children's book in America. That's one of the most competitive categories in the country. We hit the top 200 overall on Amazon. Something like 0.1% of all books published in a given year will get that high. So, guys, this wasn't just a successful troll, but I mean, this thing has become now very successful nationally. So, thank you. The reason we did this, and we timed it for right in the heart of Pride Month. And as I told you before we left for LA, if one kid whose guidance counselor is trying to convince him to keep quiet about mutilating himself just jumps on Amazon and starts searching for information in that awful Abaddon covered category and just clicks on our book because it doesn't look like the rest, and there's just one 10 or 11-year-old kid that doesn't go through with it because of what he read, the entire endeavor would be worth it. Because the name of Seth's event is correct. This is the last stand right now. Now, here's the good news. If you know your Bible and you know your history, our Lord tends to do his very best work in last stands. So thank you guys very, very much for the success of this project. And yes, they are shipping as we speak. I dropped another like 300 of them off on my way over to the gym this morning at the post office. So they are on the way. Those of you that got the autographed copies, and thousands of you have purchased it at Amazon as well. So thank you guys very much. All right, coming up on the show today, Todd and I were huddled together on the flight home from LA yesterday, trying to figure out what angles could we come up with here on what transpired in Iran over the weekend that will be unique, right? There's just going to be a lot of other people that know way more about military policy, tactics, national defense policy than we do. So we always go back to what's the source of our show, biblical worldview, right? So how do we approach this from that? We're going to take a look again. It's been many, many years. In fact, I went back and looked. The last time we did a show on just war theory, you guys didn't work here. That's the last time we did it. All right. And it was when we did two of them during the Obama years. One when he wanted to go to war with Syria. And I rendered the verdict according to just war theory. This is not a just war. And the other is when he wanted to declare war on ISIS. And I rendered a verdict that I thought, according to just war theory, that was a just war. So that's how long it has been since we have done a show on this. We are going to resurrect, pardon the pun, the Christian tradition of just war theory, explain to you what it is, why it was created over the years in the church. A lot of you that are Protestants are probably going to be completely ignorant of this. Because your leaders stupidly jettisoned tradition altogether so that, we can't think our way, out of a paper bag. So I'm going to try to do something about that in the next hour of the show. And then we're going to apply this scenario, but then also the ways that this scenario could spill over into wider conflicts and whether those things apply to just war theory or not. All right. We call God many things: Lord, Father, Creator, Sustainer. James Madison referred to him as the governor of the universe. Well, if you read your Bible, God's also a pretty darn good general. Last I checked, undefeated in warfare. So maybe we ought to pay attention to his kind of rubric and tactics about what does and doesn't work and what is not a valid fight. So we're going to do that in the next hour of the show. But first, we're going to kick this off with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Operation Midnight Hammer.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime.
The United States carried out the largest B-2 bomber operational strike in the country's history, deploying 7 B-2 Spirit bombers that flew east from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to Iran. Another group of B-2s flew west over the Pacific to act as decoys. News reports emerged over the course of the day on Saturday that a group of bombers were headed to the U.S. base in Guam. The bombers that ended up striking Iran flew nearly 40 hours nonstop round trip, refueling several times. Once in Iran airspace, the B-2s linked up with other U.S. military fighter jets who acted as escorts for the package. Some of the B-2s dropped a payload of 6 massive ordnance penetrator bombs on the Fordow nuclear facility, while another set of B-2s struck 2 other nuclear facilities in Iran, and submarines positioned some 400 miles away struck those latter nuclear facilities using Tomahawk cruise missiles. The attack unfolded over about 25 minutes on Saturday night, U.S. time. Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, crucially pointed out regarding the air operation.
We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out.
So American bombers and their crews flew over 18 hours one direction. American submarines positioned themselves around 400 miles away from their targets, and multiple branches of the armed forces coordinated with nary a leak to carry out a strike that unfolded in under a half an hour that seriously crippled Iran's nuclear ambitions, and Iran had no idea it was happening till the bombs exploded. Agree or disagree with the actions? That is some scary, impressive stuff. President Trump addressed the nation on Saturday night.
For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue.
Iran has made threats since the strike, and Iran's parliament over the weekend seemed to approve the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, which would cripple oil exports to China. This morning, Trump posted on Truth Social that the Department of Energy must drill, baby, drill. Vice President J.D. Vance addressed concerns about U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran war.
I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. That program is now destroyed. They tried to build a conventional missile program to attack neighbors in the region. That missile program has shown to be a failure. They have funded terrorism aggressively in the region, and now most of their terrorism proxies are destroyed. The Iranians are clearly not very good at war. Perhaps they should follow President Trump's lead and give peace a chance.
Now America waits for the fallout, no pun intended. The Department of Homeland Security issued a bulletin over the weekend warning of a heightened threat environment and cyber attacks in the United States after the strikes on Iran. Border czar Tom Homan says one of his biggest concerns after the Biden administration's open border policy was the threat of sleeper cells.
So I pulled numbers this morning just from a CBP under Joe Biden. There was 1,272 nationals of Iran released in the country between OFO and the Border Patrol. And you compare that to the Trump administration, zero, right? Zero releases. And right now, because of President Trump's leadership, we have the most secure border in my lifetime, most secure border in the history of this nation. So we have a secure border. That was President Trump's big win on securing this nation. So we're not releasing people in this country. Special interest aliens aren't crossing that border undetected. But under Joe Biden, we had over 10 million people cross that border. But my biggest concern from day one, beyond the fentanyl, beyond the sex trafficking women and children, were the 2 million known gotaways. Over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, because they got away, because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis that Biden created that over 2 million people crossed the border and got away. That is my biggest concern, and that's what created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen.
Back in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu praised America for its help.
Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons.
Israel kept up its strikes within Iran and announced this morning it targeted 6 more crucial Iranian military facilities deep within that country. And finally, back at home, a purportedly crazed gunman targeted Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan yesterday during a church service. However, before he could even make it into the building, a deacon at the church noticed the heavily armed and armored man and ran him over with his pickup truck before church security guards came over and eliminated the threats. Police say the suspected shooter was Brian Anthony Browning, a 31-year-old man from Romulus, Michigan. He carried an AR-15 rifle with more than a dozen fully loaded magazines, a semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. According to Wayne police, his mother is a member of the church, and he attended services 2 or 3 times over the course of the last year. There was danger. Men saw it. Men acted. And dozens of women, children, and other men at the church were protected. There's a lesson in there somewhere. And that's what happened while we were away.
You bet there is. So here's how I want to handle this story, because a lot has, I've been using social media to kind of post real-time thoughts and commentary. Generationally, I am torn on this. I am right in the middle. And if you look at, I just was looking at some polling data out just in the last 10 minutes. By the way, we have Qatar is closing its airspace. They are expecting an Iranian strike against the U.S. military base in Qatar imminently. So that's another example of why we're going to be very careful about what kind of sweeping conclusions from all this we're about to make, because it's still a developing story. So let's take a step back and look at it just from a meta standpoint. I mean, I'm generationally torn, right? My parents' generation, who have lived, for 50 years under the banner of Iranian terrorism and evil, see this as, and Trump would be a member of that generation, as an absolute worthwhile escapade. The younger generation, the ones that would be called to serve, should things escalate, not so much. Can't blame them for that, given the track record of stupid presidents, as J.D. Vance said there. What a statement that was. Well, previously we had stupid presidents. Well, sure. Can't argue with that. All right. So So I have been kind of conflicted about this from the beginning. I mean, even last week, I told you my stated objectives were Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We cannot get involved in another regime change escapade in the Middle East. And I told you before I left for LA, now those are seemingly contradictory goals at times. I have no idea how to navigate them. I don't know. I think sometimes in this business, we need to say, I don't know, maybe a little bit more often. I really don't know. I don't have I don't even know what I don't know. I don't even know what I don't know. Okay, so I couldn't possibly know. I just know that that's what I think, and I'm probably not unique in those two things. And this is not me trying to split any kind of baby in half. I'm the in-between generation. I'm the generation that grew up, and under the shroud of Iran is maybe the most evil regime in the world, and also sat there post 9/11 and watched a lot of the guys that we grew up with go over to Afghanistan and Iraq, and then later Aaron's generation for absolutely nothing. It turned out in the end, right? So I'm conflicted because both of those things are simultaneously true. There's not a nation on earth that is more actively targeted for killing and kidnapping Americans, especially when you consider their proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas. No regime on earth has done more since the fall of the Soviet Union to harm the United States, its citizens, and its interests than Iran. That's just a fact. That may not comport with somebody's, I don't want war. Well, I mean, you can pass war control, I guess. I mean, maybe if you pass it in Congress and Iran will just sit there and say, well, snap, man, we're going to bomb the Qatar base, but they passed war control in the U.S., so I guess the whole friggin' thing's off. I mean, that's just not the world we live in. On the other hand, I'm about as eager to see an American boot on the ground with a son who just turned 18 and registered for selective service, and a son-in-law whose most of his unit just got redeployed to Iraq. I mean, I'm about as anxious to do that as I am to give up pumpkin spice here in a couple of months. All right, for Lent. All right, ain't high on the list, bro. Okay, so I'm not trying to split any baby in half. I'm not trying to play both sides. I'm the in-between generation on this. The generation ahead of me and the generation behind me are really convinced, based on their perspectives of where they are. Well, my kids and my parents are at odds, and I'm the generation in between, and I can see both sides at times. So what we really have to trust in here is the management of this thing, because the thing's going down regardless of what we think about it, and it already has. And then there's the we're America, how you like them apples in me from the 80s. Watching that briefing yesterday, 40 hours of flight time, undetected, didn't take on a single piece of enemy fire at all the entire time. I mean, I see that stuff, man, and I wanna feel the need for speed. It's I'm a teenage kid, and we just sent Gaddafi and Libya back to the Stone Age in the spring of '86 all over again. I mean, so here's where I'm at analytically. I'm not concerned about, as of right now, I am not concerned about American boots having to be on the ground in Iran. I am concerned about the number of Iranian boots on the ground in America. Between what the Israelis did, somewhere between systemically diminish Iran's war capacity to maybe mortally wound it. I mean, even their counter missile barrages have been, in terms of the results. I mean, there have been deaths. Last I saw was about 25 deaths. Does that sound right, Aaron?
In Israel?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Far below so far.
I mean, given the amount of
estimates.
drones and missiles being launched, that is just anemic.
That's what we're being told anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see a systemic war capacity for Iran, just given the fact we went right into the heart of their country, decimated their most valuable military asset in their face, and just walked out like how you like them apples. So I'm not so much concerned. You're not seeing the rest of the world. I know there's this report. Medvedev, he's kind of, Putin's first mate over there, fake president. Putin's really the leader, saying, well, actually, now all kinds of nations want to come forward and give Iran nukes. I don't buy that for a second, because you know why? They could have given Iran nukes last week, the week before that, 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 the year before that, the year before that, the year before that, the year. You know who's, by the way, sitting on the largest nuke stockpile on planet Earth? You know who it is? It's actually Russia. They could have actually given Iran nukes all this time. Why didn't they do it? Because they know it would touch off a massive arms race in the Middle East. That's why. I think that's a lot of just political posturing and BS. So I think you guys, again, I can't believe how many people I saw yesterday melt down when Trump posted about regime change in Iran with no context at all. Because it could have just simply been he hopes the Iranian people overturn the regime. I mean, if in the next 10 minutes you found out there were mass demonstrations in Tehran, are you sad about that, guys?
No.
Anybody in this audience like, well, that's just really disappointing news? And no! I'm all for regime change in Iran. I just don't want to do the changing. Can I get a witness on that?
Amen.
As long as we ain't the ones doing the changing. I mean, listen, I'm even okay if the Iranian high command and what is ever left of them, the Israelis haven't killed yet, all decided to just have one banger with Vestal virgins in one sitting, and we just dropped a bomb and got them all in one fell swoop, and then told the rest of the Iranian people, figure out this mess from here, we out. I'd be okay with that too. All right, so I'm all fine. I'm totally fine with regime change in Iran as long as we ain't the ones changing the regime. Okay, as long as it ain't us. All right, feel free to make Iran great again if you're Iranian. It's on you, and we're praying for you. All right. So, I mean, the people who lost their minds over this yesterday. It's been 10 years of this. You haven't figured out with Trump yet. Literally everything is leverage in a negotiation. Every statement, literally everything is. Literally everything is. And nope, I mean, I even saw MAGA people losing their minds. I'm like, where is this now? Where the guy who was helping to lead the Free the Delegates movement 10 years ago has to go to the MAGA griffluencers and say, guys, you know your guy's just out there just art of the deal in here, right? But that happened yesterday too. To quote the great prophet Aaron Rodgers, relax, okay? Now, there are unforeseen circumstances here. I have a hard time believing the Iranian regime is just going to sit over there and say, I guess we just take the L here, guys. You know, I'm not sure mediation's, part of the Shia understanding of the world that they are zealously in pursuit of. Okay. So we are now into the law of unintended consequences. But here's the thing. There would have been a law of unintended consequences if we had done nothing. We are in a fallen world. I know our confidence is shaken because of how poor our leadership was, and frankly, the previous leadership, how treacherous it was. Let me go back to what I said at the top of the show. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino ought to be rounding up today. Go out right now. I'm not even joking. This is not even just for engagements. After watching that Tom Homan interview yesterday, the whole thing on Fox News Sunday, Patel and Bongino ought to be sending agents out right now to get arrest warrants for previous members of the Biden administration that allowed whatever the hell went on, and literally the hell went on at the southern border, and just start arresting people for treason and put them on trial. And refer them to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi for treason. Because really, to me, the only real concern I have right now is that. And now we're sitting in a place where, remember what just happened? What was that? The Sugar Bowl, right? During the college football playoff, that's where the bombing was. That was the game over Christmas. Every event, every gathering, anywhere we have no idea how deeply penetrated this is into the country. No idea at all. The only real spillover fear we feel now, 48 hours after this, is because of what our own government under the previous administration allowed into the country. Cicero's enemy at the gates still proven to be true. A nation can survive its fools and its enemies, but it cannot survive its own traitors. That's really the last card Iran has to play. Hamas, Hezbollah, demoralized. They've also been greatly damaged by the war waged by Israel since October 7th. Iran's counter is where to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. That hurts China, not us. China gets 90% of its oil from Iran some years. They're out of cards to play over there, except one. And the real reason they have that card to play is because of who was in charge for the last 4 years and what they allowed into the country. And if that's not cause for treason, somebody tell me I'm just overreacting.
Nope.
If that is not a treasonous act, then explain to me exactly what is a treasonous act at this point. The very definition of treason, aiding and abetting and comforting enemies of the United States, right?
You are here.
Is that not what I just described? That's really the last card for now. Things may change that Iran seems to have to play, and our own government did it to us. Folks, our friends at SelectQuote have made the process of finding the right insurance for you easier and simpler than ever before. They take the guesswork out of finding the right life insurance policy. You don't have to sort through dozens of confusing options on your own. Instead, one of their licensed agents will find the right policy at the right time for you, comparing plans from trusted, top-rated insurance companies to find a policy that fits your health, your lifestyle, and your budget. And yes, that includes those pesky pre-existing conditions, all right? And they work for you for free. So life insurance has never been cheaper than it is today. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at SelectQuote.com/Steve. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at SelectQuote.com/Steve today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/Steve. Head over there, get started today, and get the big discount at SelectQuote.com/Steve. All right, let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vanderplaats. Good to see you, brother.
Hey, how you doing? I hear you're a national best-selling author.
Well, you know what? Aaron, can we put that up again? I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up again, but since you wanted to go there, all right, you're going to compel me and force me to do it. Yes. Not only now, first of all, and we'll get into your event here. I guarantee I will be the very first. You've had presidents come and speak at your leadership summit, heads of state come and speak at your leadership summit, great, famous, and terrific people come and speak at your leadership summit, right?
I have.
But now, for the very first time at the Family Leader Leadership Summit, a certified LGBTQ FU, and the FU stands for Forgive You. I don't know what you guys out there thought that it meant, but get yourselves together, all right? A certified LGBTQ FU bestseller will now be speaking at the Family Leadership Summit. That has never happened before. So,
and we can't wait to welcome you to the stage. And if you would do me a favor, explain the FU to that crowd, too. I'm not sure why I had to tell you that, but I think you should.
There would be a great generational split there. All right, the grandparents in the audience like, what are we doing? And the grandkids in the audience would be like, oh, that was kind of edgy. I kind of like that. Yeah. But in all seriousness, I'll never pull off a more successful troll than this, and could not have possibly done it without the audience here. I got to give a shout out to the people here at the Blaze. I mean, the network really went in to push Richie last week, especially. Glenn gave it a shout out. Sarah did. Stu did. The network did. And then I got to say this, man. My literary team, Tyler, Charles, and John. There is no way this happens without them. No way.
But
they made
Steve,
it happen.
I also saw David Limbaugh push it out.
Yep.
Charlie Kirk. There's others who are just like pushing this stuff out, and pretty soon people are going to love the month of June for #Richie.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you. And now it's not just a LGBTQ bestseller. Now it's a national bestseller because of all what those people did too. So
I always saw it coming.
So again, I wasn't going to bring it up again, but since you wanted me to talk about me, I guess I'll oblige.
I just want a seat on the private plane.
Oh, please. You know that's my sellout price. I've told you for years. Everybody's always wondered, what is Deace's sellout price? He doesn't have. I do have one. All right. Chartered private airfare. That is my sellout price, and literally,
I'm with you on that.
I mean, give me the pack of Newports. I'm on the splotchy green eyeliner. I'm your Huckleberry. All right, I'm yours. That's all it takes. All right, but it's an expensive taste. All right. Speaking of airfare, over 40 hours undetected from Missouri to Iran. Now we won't know. It'll take weeks to find out for sure. The complete level of decimation of the particularly one of the main facility that Iran had over there. As we speak, there are sirens going off in Qatar right now. They are expecting an Iranian strike there against the U.S. base there, and I'm going to call it Qatar and Qatar interchangeably because in my lifetime it's been called both.
Yeah.
But they have shut down airspace over there right now as a defense mechanism. But seeing the leadership, and I want to direct you to something that Aaron played, because the events are still happening, right? So having some kind of take on the events themselves for a story that is still developing, I think it's premature.
We're in real time.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about the messaging and the leadership that you've seen thus far, and starting with a clip that Aaron played in his montage about 15, 20 minutes ago. J.D. Vance, who's considered the most Team Tucker of Trump's inner circle. Is that
Sure.
fair? Okay.
Yep.
So to send him out and plus he's the best messenger that Trump has, maybe other than himself. Okay. And to say, listen, I understand everybody's hesitancies about all this given the failures of previous presidents, but unlike before, we had stupid presidents. That's what he literally said. Unlike before, we had stupid presidents, and now we don't. We have a president that just wants to accomplish American objectives and has really no other interest other than that. We're not at war with Iran. We're not at war with the people of Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. That was his messaging. You saw the message the president gave Saturday night afterwards. The three things that stuck out to me about that, we know he likes to riff. I think he wanted to send us a message. I'm all business here. There was no riffing. Number two, I don't know that I've ever heard a president say, "We love you, God," before, like in my entire lifetime. I don't think I've ever heard that. And I think that he was making kind of a personal appeal. I think he did kind of riff on that one a little bit. And then thirdly, if you were hoping, rightly or wrongly, but if you were hoping for a decoupling from Israel, the speech that the president gave after the bombing in Iran probably is not going to be a jam hit single for you, because that was anything other than that message.
We're standing with you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Steve, I know President Trump fairly well. I've been around him a lot. Matter of fact, Darla and I were in Mar-a-Lago in April with him and had a chance just to visit about a lot of things. And so I think I can read him. When he gave that press conference, I saw him as this was a weighty decision. Mm-hmm. And he did not take it lightly. You can tell I did not take this lightly. But when he said, I want to thank a lot of people, and he said, begin with thank you, God, and then broke off into love you, God. To me, that was from the heart. It just exposed his heart. And almost like love you, God, mean, I hope I did right by you on this one. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a very touching moment that will go down in the legacy of his presidency.
I agree. So what do you think in terms of how this has been conducted from what you've seen from a leadership perspective so far and to what's been presented to the American people?
Well, let me go back to last week. When you had, so everybody had an opinion on this, right? What should you do? What shouldn't you do? But there's all this talk, even going back to last Monday's segment that we discussed this. What's the right call here? And my prayer and my counsel to anybody that would listen was shut out the white noise. Shut out all the talking heads who want to and really get quiet and lean into an audience of one. And that's why I thought it was so touching when he said, love you, God. That an audience of one. But Steve, your axiom came up to me a lot of different times, and that axiom was do not shoot what you don't intend to kill. Mm-hmm. And whether we like it that Israel went in or not, before an Iranian agreement, Trump says, listen, I gave Iran plenty of times to make a deal. They didn't make a deal.
Gave him 60 days.
And then Israel goes in. Now, whether you like that or not, the fact is they went in. Mm-hmm. And so they shot Iran. Now the thing is, don't shoot what you don't intend to kill. Mm-hmm. You got Hamas weakened, you got Hezbollah weakened, you got Iran severely weakened. The time is now if you're going to do it. That doesn't mean this is going to end it once and for all. As you guys know, this is biblical in nature. But it sends a message that we're serious about this. We're staying with Israel, and we are not going to allow you to have a nuclear weapon.
This brings to mind the debate that Tucker Carlson had with Ted Cruz last week. And you also know those two individuals very, very well, too. Yeah. You know them both even better than I do.
92 million people live in Iran.
Yep. Nice. I saw the meme. Does Trump know how many people live in Iran? Can he go up there and speak tonight? That being said, and that was a mistake by Tucker and his social media team to lead with that clip as a gotcha, because there was actually very substantive conversation happening throughout the rest of that 2 hours.
Yep.
Okay? And I do think it's a debate and a conversation. I think clearly Ted represents team Mark Levin.
Sure.
Okay. And, Tucker is, of course, he's team captain of Team Tucker. Mm-hmm. And I do think on the right, we have to reevaluate what is our foreign policy rubric in a post-Cold War world, the failed assumptions of the post-9/11 world. And we have to figure that out. Okay. And I will say this, you could go back and find Steve Deace 10 years ago working, 17-hour days to make Ted Cruz president of the United States against Donald Trump. I never would imagine I'd say this, but I am actually thankful today that Trump is president and not Ted, as much as I love the senator.
Without question.
Because I do think we need someone who does not have a narrative, does not have a dog yet in the fight that we're having on our side that we need to have, but that fight's not settled yet.
Right.
And I think right now all we need to just have is someone with just cold-blooded pragmatism. Is this working for America? We're going to keep doing it. If it's not working for America, we're out. Okay, like, okay, fine. There was some kind of ruse between him and Bibi, but if Israel goes in there last week and can't pull off what they did, you think Trump just sticks with this entire thing the whole time?
Absolutely
no,
not.
He drops that stock that is failing faster than you can say bankruptcy, right? Okay.
His deal was, Israel, you showed me that you're prepared. You showed me what you knew what you were doing. And Steve, it's a little bit, you go back to Trump's first administration during COVID. And I was on the show saying, listen, nobody wants to open up businesses more than Trump. Why? Because he's a businessman. This case, he doesn't want to be entangled into foreign wars. He wants to truly make America great again. And so therefore you're saying, okay, if that's his intent, that's his interest, and he makes the decision, we're going in, we're going to do this, he believes America interest is at stake as well. I think most people believe that.
Yeah, see, because here's the thing. Unless you're in the Iranian high command, you don't have perfect intel. Okay?
Right.
So you're going off of assumptions, right? And guesses. And some people's guesses and assumptions are better than others. And this is why worldview is destiny. Because if you have a worldview side in this narrative battle, you might project things one way or another.
Sure.
In order, because of the narrative that you have. As opposed to, this guy just is, that's all he cares about is this a threat to American interests? Then we'll deal with it. And if we're not dealing with it the right way, we'll cut it out. But what did you think of that debate? The clips of it and the things you saw overall. What did you think
of the debate with
Cruz and with Tucker? Because that debate is going to long outlive Trump's presidency.
Well, I think what you're saying is why we stand with the nation of Israel. And obviously, I'm going to land a whole lot more of Ted Cruz on this one than say with Tucker Carlson on this one. I believe there is a reason why we show there's no separation between us and Israel. Biblically, yes. Now, theologically, it expands way beyond a secular nation that we call Israel today. But at the same time, they are an ally of ours. They're an ally of ours in a very hostile region. I think what Trump saw, not only is it in the best interest of America, but the entire region doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb. I think he got that as well. But the other thing, Steve, I brought this up at our team meeting just a little while ago, is we talked about this because they're going to get asked about it. What's your thoughts on this, both from a secular positioning as well as a biblical positioning? And I said, the reason I'm so thrilled that President Trump is our commander-in-chief at this time, but almost what you said, more than, say, Ron DeSantis, more than I say Ted Cruz, and you and I were both on Cruz and DeSantis teams to make that happen. One is that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, where we talked about, where God shook him. God woke him up. I mean, there is no doubt that has had a major impression on his life. But then, two, having the clarity on the decision that I need to make, and then even saying, love you, God, basically saying, I hope I did right by you. Isn't that what all of us talk about? I hope I did right by you. I want to hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. And it's just like God to use a vessel like Donald Trump to carry out his wishes at this time. And I believe, and this is what Greg Baker brought up in our team meeting, so the gospel can go forth. This is an opportunity for the gospel to go forth. And if there's a regime change, that could happen, both for those in Iran, but also for those in Israel.
I'm fine
well.
with regime change in Iran as long as we ain't the regime doing the changing.
Exactly.
The Iranian people want to make Iran great again. Go get him, Tiger.
Exactly.
Yeah, love you, but yeah, that's not for me. Now, update on Qatar, by the way.
Yep.
Iran, various reports that Iran has launched up to 6 missiles, which is not very many. And there are actual reports that Iran actually gave a heads up to avoid military casualties.
They telegraphed this for hours.
Yeah. So in other words, some attempt to maybe save face
to their people,
to their own people.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, finish your point. I'm sorry.
Well, because of all this taking place, I know this is going to go into the leadership summit, and you're going to be there. But what I did is I reached out, and I believe now Joel Rosenberg is going to come back to the summit. Joel Rosenberg, as you guys know, has written novels. As a matter of fact, Jan Michelson, your counterpart at WHO, basically said, tell him to stop writing because all those novels keep coming true. And I think of a novel they wrote called The Persian Gamble. And now you're seeing this get played out here a little bit. But Joel lives in Israel. He'll give great insight. It's another reason to come to the Leadership Summit, Steve, besides you coming to the summit. I really think this summit is divinely appointed for such time as this.
Let me give some advice as someone that is working quite a bit one of my focuses right now is reaching the young men. Okay, reaching men, but the young men.
Sure.
Right? And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're seeing, and you know this, you have sons.
Yeah.
There is a massive generational rift in the church right now when it comes to Israel. Okay? And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to have to make an argument for Israel other than the one that Ted made to Tucker. That's just not going to work. Okay? And the reality is that that Ted's view of Israel is the dominant view of American Christianity. However, Tucker's view of Israel is actually the dominant view of historical Christianity. All right, what Tucker is articulating prior to the late 19th, early 20th century is pretty much what collectively the Christian church thought for, 1,800 years. It's still what the Catholic Church thinks today. It is still what, and why does it matter with young men? Young men are returning to the church in droves. Who are they primarily going to? Catholics. And you know this as a Dutch guy, Reformed theology. Yeah. And so this is where the Reformers and Catholics had many of the same views of Israel and its future, that Tucker Carlson does. And to me, you're going to have to learn to make an argument other than Joe Rosenberg's argument. You're going to have to learn to make the argument that it's in our strategic. This is why I don't ever talk about that on this show. To me, the argument is Israel is an allied nation, a democracy in the Middle East that is willing to be a cudgel between Islamic hegemony, particularly Shia Islamic hegemony, and the United States of America. I have no reason at all why we'd want to get in the middle of that. Why would we not want a cudgel between us and Shia Islam? Okay? Because I'm just going to tell you right now, the young men that you actually need to serve in the armed forces, just quoting them, Genesis 12:3 is not going to work. All right, because there could be a million contexts to that the church understood differently until the last couple hundred years. We're going to have to come up with another strategic discussion. I'll give you the last minute on that.
Well, and that's why I think with President Trump, why is this in our best interest? Why would I involve myself? Because I don't think he got caught up in any of that. His whole deal was, how does this protect America's interests at this point?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that, Aaron, I saw you nodding your head as I was saying that to Bob.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you got to put the poly back in politician. Understand that going forward, you're going to be in your own coalition talking to multiple different viewpoints who are maybe happy to be co-belligerents with you on 90% of issues, but on this issue, they may see you as being kooky. That doesn't mean you have to abandon your belief about what Israel is. You just have to explain your support for Israel, understanding those different perspectives and maybe making a case from different perspectives, just like Steve did. They're a geopolitical ally in a very difficult part of the world.
And I think there's a difference between a biblical commitment to Israel and a strategic commitment to the nation of Israel as well. There's a theological basis, but there's also a strategic basis as well.
I agree. And I think the younger generation is going to need to hear probably more of the strategic basis based on the trend lines I'm seeing. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too.
All right. We're going to come back and we're going to dust off just war theory. And is what we're doing in Iran, what we just did, does it align with that value system? We'll talk about that here in a moment. Stay tuned. We're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do that by emailing the program, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And then please subscribe to our new YouTube channel there, at Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you love the podcast version, make sure you subscribe to that as well. You can do that by hitting subscribe, and then on Apple iTunes, you hit follow, and that makes sure that every time we do a new episode, it's right there in your feed. Every single time, rather convenient. Thank you if you've done that for us. And then thank you if you've left us a 5-star review on your podcast platform as well. We appreciate each and every one of those, and we'd appreciate it if you would do that for us today. Thank you guys very much for making Richie Meets the Rainbow now a national bestseller. You can get your copy at Amazon.com and keep us trending in the LGBTQ FU category. When you and I were joking during Fauci and Bargain, when it went number 1 overall, that there were people at like major publishing houses like, what is this? Who are these guys? Right? Because we're up there with like Matthew McConaughey, I think had a book out about that time, right? Okay. And there are people like at Simon & Schuster and stuff like, who is Steve Deace? and what is a Todd Erzin, right?
sure.
Okay. Can you imagine where whatever the Abaddon-based entity is that is publishing every one of the other books trending right now in the LGBTQ FU category? Can you imagine as they go through that list and they're saying, what? I mean, can you imagine? You know what? I'm actually fantasizing about this now. They're like calling each other up on the phone. Did you guys publish this? Do you know who these guys are? How'd they get in our category? How'd they get in here? Thank you guys for making it happen. Just the thought of that makes the whole thing worth it.
If they try to hunt you down and ask you questions about who you are, just make sure they use the right pronouns with you,
Yes.
because that's important.
Indeed. I mean, I identify as whatever you want me to be. Indeed. We are brought to you by our friends over at Smart Credit. You know, with interest rates hopefully expected to drop, you could be saving a ton of money on your financing, but that's not the full story, all right? Because you also need to make sure you've got the credit rating to take advantage of that as well. Well, on average, Smart Credit users raise their credit scores up to 34 points in 30 days. Imagine that. Could be a lower car payment, better mortgage rates, major savings. Smart Credit's patented technology scans your credit profile, pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when. That is important, I'm telling you. I know it's weird. I know it's gay and retarded, but you actually at times do not help your credit score as much as you think if you like come into a massive sum of money and just pay everything off instantly. The whole thing is a scam like a lot of other things nowadays. So having someone say, all right, in 10 days, pay that. I've done this before. It does help. It's needed, all right? And it helps you to maximize your score. So take control of your credit score with Smart Credit. Be ready to cash in when interest rates fall. You can start with your 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1. You can see right there, for just $1, how many points you can add to your credit score. And that's smartcredit.com/Steve. Then you can decide from there if you want to sign up or not. But just $1 to see how many points they can add to your score at smartcredit.com/Steve, smartcredit.com/Steve. Please remember, by the way, average point changes are based on historical data. Individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. Also want to let you know that our friend and colleague, Ali Stuckey, her Share the Arrows event is happening October 11th in Dallas, Texas. If you want to get tickets today, it's got music from Francesca Battistelli, so many other great speakers there as well. It's a day of worship for her. All right, teaching, powerful conversation, bold women. You can see there the speaker lineup there. Taylor Dukes, Katie Faust, and more. Tickets and details are at sharethearrows.com. That's sharethearrows.com. And yes, VIP options are still available. All right, get your tickets at sharethearrows, plural, sharethearrows.com. Okay. So the last time we dusted this thing off, Todd and Aaron didn't work here. That's how many years ago it's been. But as Todd and I were flying back from LA yesterday, trying to figure out how we wanted to talk about this, we knew we wanted to devote the second hour of the show today to the events currently transpiring in the Middle East. Okay, but we have a couple of challenges. Number one, they're still happening in real time. The story is still developing. Okay, and then number two, what is an angle that we could provide that might be unique to us? That by the time you guys get to this, we're assuming we're not the only podcast you guys listen to, okay? And so what could we provide that would not just be redundancy? And so we got to thinking about, well, you know, what's our prime directive as a show, biblical worldview. So a lot of ways you're going to see this applied to this story is going to be based on somebody's views of prophecy in the end times. And again, that is a debate that we think is necessary and welcome and needs to be had. But that's not the debate and the discussion we're going to have this hour. Instead, we're going to go back into church history, church tradition. Yes, I'm a Protestant. I esteem tradition. I'm not afraid of it. I just don't think it should be on the same level as the Bible, but like right beneath it. Because who better to learn from than the people who got to read the Bible before we did, and who had the Holy Spirit in their lives before any of us were born? I mean, name me a civilization that doesn't want to learn from its elders, and I'll show you a civilization that's pretty close to being at the end. Now, notice the word that I said there, though. Did I say copy their elders? Is that what I said?
No.
I said learn from, which means learn from their mistakes and also their victories. Okay? And unfortunately, just speaking to my native tribe here, a lot of modern American evangelicalism lacks context for its faith. because they went too far the other way with church history and tradition and just essentially just jettisoned it altogether. And it's for moments like this that it's really helpful and useful. Again, you put it up next to the Word of God and you chew the meat and spit out the bones, but it's still useful nevertheless. And there's going to be plenty of meat there more often than not. And so during this hour, we're going to talk about just war theory. Not just war as in, I just want this, okay? But just as in justice, okay? Now, just war theory has its origins in the church with Augustine. It didn't end there. This is a rubric and a hermeneutic that was refined and defined all throughout church history until the most contemporary era. Aquinas had much to say about this. The Reformers had much to say about this. Now, the reason why it began with Augustine is because the church, culminating with Augustine, did what Hannibal couldn't do and did what the barbarians couldn't do. Conquered Rome. And so Augustine introduced, see, eschatology does matter. What you think about how the story ends will go a long way towards determining how you want to write the story until we get to the ending. Augustine introduced an eschatology today that we now know as amillennialism. And where he really defined this is in his great work, City of God. And Augustine said, and he based this largely off of the parable of the weeds, right? Parable Jesus tells that there's a farmer and he's awakened by his staffers. And they tell him, hey, we got to do something about this. There's all these weeds in the garden. And I love what the farmer says next. An enemy has done this. And so the farmer's assistants say, should we go out into the garden right now and pluck all these weeds out? And the farmer says, nope. The weeds and the crop, or the wheat and the tare, there's lots of different ways you can look at this. It's described in multiple, the sheep and the goats, it's described in multiple different ways biblically, okay, in the scriptures. But that these things they coincide with each other. And they compete with one another. All right, Augustine gave it his own label, the city of man and the city of God. Sometimes you've heard this referred to as what's known as two kingdoms eschatology. And that these two kingdoms coexist, right? That there is a literal kingdom of God, that there is a literal return of Christ, but the period that we now know as 1,000-year reign is largely metaphorical. And there's lots of metaphor in the Bible. For example, the Bible says the Lord, He is the Lord of the cows on 1,000 hills. So does that mean if we get to the 1,000th and first hill, the Lord doesn't own that cow? Is that what that means? There's lots of, Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. Does that mean he thinks that you should go out and, spread yourself as a seasoning over the meat you grill? There's lots of metaphor in the Bible. The Bible is to be taken literally, or is the literal word of God, but it's not always meant to be taken literally. There's lots of metaphor, lots of idiom, lots of euphemisms. And so this is the eschatology that was largely birthed by Augustine. And it comes at the time now that Rome has become a Christianized culture. So Rome starts with the persecution of Christians. It goes then to the off again, on again, off again tolerance of them, depending on who the emperor is. It's on a case-by-case basis. To now, from Constantine to Augustine, Rome is a champion of Christianity. Christianity is the official religion of the most powerful nation the world had ever seen, most powerful empire the world had ever seen up until that point, Rome. Here's the thing. Did Rome have enemies?
For sure.
Yeah. Now, Rome was the most powerful empire that ever lived at the time, but did it have control and conquest of the entire world at that time?
Not even close.
Not even close. So there were enemies of Rome. Now, Rome also had pre-existing enemies aside from its newfound faith in Christ, correct?
Yes.
And so which of those enemies are legit? Which of Rome's, just because, see, Augustine would have been called a Christian nationalist by our media in the 5th century, okay? But just because they're Rome's enemies may not mean they're Christianity's enemies. However, it was also very likely that many of Rome's enemies at that time were going to be enemies of Christianity. That's one of the things they hated about Rome. So how would we define these things? When is it okay? I mean, we are the turn the other cheek people. We weren't founded by a warlord. That's Islam, right? We're not commanded to go out and take life for the kingdom. We're commanded to give our lives for the kingdom as a life was given for us. On the other hand, it is very clear in the scriptures that there is a time for war. God wages it several times throughout the scriptures himself. So how would we define these things? When is it just? When is it the right moment and time that a war is justified? Because now here's the thing. Everyone always agreed, except for pacifists in the ancient world. We know them as Anabaptists in our world. That's Mennonites, Quakers. Everyone else throughout the history of Christianity always agreed that self-defense is a concurrent theme right throughout the scriptures. So that's not what we're debating here. So there's not a debate. If in the next 5 minutes, Red Dawn is real life, and you're at some high school in the Midwest, and you look out the window, and Russian troops are parachuting into your town, we're not debating just war theory, correct? No. Get all the able-bodied men you can, give them a weapon, and defend yourself. All right? So this does not account for self-defense. That is an automatic. That is set aside from this conversation. This is traditionally why Christian cultures have not punished those who killed in self-defense. Self-defense is inherently seen as a God-given right. So we're not debating that. What we're debating is the gray area. And how do we best navigate that? And I think we can all agree that many of the wars we've been fighting for the last few decades ain't because we got Pearl Harbored, okay? They've been kind of gray areas. And so I think that this is an excellent time to dust back off just war theory and what it means. Any thoughts on that introduction? There's a lot more I could say. We could just do an entire show on just the introduction, but I kind of wanted to set the scene for you guys as to why at this point in church history it begins to be debated. And by the way, this rubric, use the word the kids use today, algorithm of just war theory, it's been debated, updated since the time of Augustine, okay? So we're going to go with what are the traditional standard components of just war theory going back to Augustine, but those have been debated. You can find alterations to those throughout the course of church history. Any issues with the prologue that I wanted to make sure to grant us some context before we get into this that you guys want to discuss right now or get on with it? What do you think?
Say, let's get on with it.
Yeah. All right. So there are 5 components to just war theory. We're going to look at each one of them one by one. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to talk about what we did to Iran on Saturday night. That's all we're going to do. And then after we do that, we're going to spend the rest of the hour taking a look at, let's get ahead of the story. Let's be proactive. What are some potential aftershocks, spillover effects of what we did to Iran? And do we have some preemptive boundaries via just war theory about where we can and cannot go? Fair? Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. All right, so let's start. Here's the very first component of just war theory, okay? There must be a just cause. There must be a just cause. Now, again, notice that we're not talking self-defense. That's always a just cause. So there's no point in debating whether self-defense is a just cause because it's always a just cause. And that's the first component. And that's why self-defense isn't a part of this. Asked and answered, Your Honor. All right. So, is the action you are taking a justifiable cause? We are being told, and we believe our leaders took this action because the cause here is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Now, based on Iran's behavior since 1979, when you and I went to elementary school every day with the latest update of the hostages in Iran. There's been at least 1,200 Americans whose deaths Iran is responsible for in the last 40 years. But then when you factor in how much it's responsible for the funding of Hamas, Hezbollah, some of the largest terrorist organizations in the world, there would be tertiary causes or cost added to that as well. So my belief is that yes, a nation that chants death to America, calls us the great Satan, has proven routinely over the course of 5 decades it will act on such things. They're not just postures. They will act on them. To me, the only debate is, are we sure they were far enough along that it justified the spillover potential of this? I don't even think it's debatable that allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon is an absolutely terrible idea. So I do think this meets the first threshold. What do you guys think?
I agree with that, but it's because I agree with it that I also think sooner or later we need something definitive about where exactly that nuclear program was actually at, because we've been down the rabbit hole of the past and weapons of mass destruction and preemptive war. And if you're using this as what is in theory absolutely right, a just war, but it's not, you're using it because you know the power of the theory, but in practice they're no closer than they were before. Mm-hmm. Again, I said this last week, then I have some concerns, but I don't argue with your application of theory and history, but I just don't think, I hope that's not just a device and an excuse. It's important in this moment and this time to go to war with those people that there's a level of accuracy to that specific indictment, that they are closer than they were than they have been at any time in the past.
I'm with Todd here. I wanted to see more, and I do not appreciate, I think, a couple of instances last week where it seemed like we were getting our arm twisted a little bit. I brought them, I can't remember if I brought it up on air, but those news reports, hey, we found a new nuclear facility, that one that we didn't know about. Oh, okay, so just, that's convenient right after this war kicked off. We just found out about a new nuclear facility. That to me sounds ridiculous. So it seemed like there was a little bit of arm twisting going on last week. I just want to know specifically how far along they actually were, because that will inform whether or not this was actually a just cause, because I agree with that. At some point, guys, you just have to take people at their word. Mm-hmm. You just have to. Okay, I'm 32 years old. My entire life, one of the pillars of Iranian leadership's worldviews is that America is the great Satan. They say that over and over again. They have acted as if they believe that rhetoric over and over again, starting with taking hostages right after their revolution. At some point, you just have to start taking people at their word. But regardless of that, I still want to see how far along they were to actually being an imminent threat to the United States. Now, one thing that has developed over the past hours or so, I would say, is there's reports that this exact plan, Operation Midnight Hammer, was actually in development for going on back to November of last year. So that tells you maybe there was some intel going back further than just the last couple of weeks that Iran was really real. I mean, they were about to get very close to some sort of weapon using nuclear technology. But I still want to see more in the future.
Well said, both of you. By the way this works is if you don't get past number one, you don't move on to the rest. If it's not a just cause, then we're not doing any other math. We're not taking on any other calculations. If it's not a just cause, then there's no point in calculating what comes after this one. Okay?
Right.
So theoretically, we all agree not permitting Iran to have a nuclear weapon is a just cause. Where we are unsure is how reliable is our own intelligence and the agencies, especially given the behavior of the last several years. Fair?
Yes.
All right. Okay. This moves us to number 2 on the list. All right. Would what is being contemplated be an example of comparative justice? So in other words, do we execute people for jaywalking? That's just one too many jaywalking tickets. Off with your head. No, we don't do that. All right. Okay. So it is the destruction the action will cause on top of the collateral damage that is, you can measure it, get an accurate estimate of it, but it's impossible. When you start blowing things up, particularly with the weapons we have nowadays, when you start blowing things up, no one really knows. Okay? So the actual and assumed cost of the action, is it comparative? Or are you acting out of bounds, for example? Right? In this case, we didn't kill, I don't think we even killed a single Iranian military asset, let alone a civilian. We just went in the dead of night when it would be the shortest staffed. What was it, 2:30 in the morning their time is when we struck?
Yep.
Right? So we went in the dead of night where it would be the shortest staffed, the least amount of collateral damage you could have possibly contemplated. Many of these are in remote mountainous regions of Iran, which also just kind of cuts down on the collateral damage aspect. And so, there would be a risk. You're dropping this much wattage on top of radiation, enriched uranium. What happens? So far, the Atomic Energy Commission is saying it has not detected any increase in radiation since the devastating blast on Saturday morning. So, in my view, given what we executed, I think it meets the threshold of comparative justice because it also aligns with the first stated cause, which is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all we wanted to take out was their nuclear weapons program. Agree or disagree?
Agree. I'm going for the sake of argument, assume that all of the worst case scenarios, both in terms of access to the technology being imminent or already being in place and a willingness to use, I'm just going to assume that that's there on some level. This is unambiguously true that this was proportionate in terms of a comparative response.
Yes. I mean, from one, not trying to be cute, but, when you're taking into the math equation here that they have killed untold numbers of our own people, comparative justice might have been even more so than what we did. But in terms of the stated goal here, yes, you're taking it. They can't have weapons, nuclear weapons, so they're not going to have nuclear weapons. That's a tit for tat.
Pardon me. By the way, update from Qatar: 6 Iranian missiles launched. All 6 were intercepted by air defenses. Iran's Supreme National Security Council put out a statement saying that the Iranian army, quote, pulverized the U.S. Al Udeid air base in Qatar in response to this weekend's nuclear strikes in Iran. And it goes on to say the number of missiles matched the number of U.S. bombs used, and also claims the strikes avoided civilian areas. So
Qatar, just because I think it's not ideology. I think it's just pragmatism. They have long aligned with Iran. They've tried to play both sides of this issue because they share what? A giant natural gas field and they're neighbors, basically. What do you think it says that Iran attacked mainly a U.S. base inside Qatar?
A regime that's been friendly to them in the past.
What do you think that says?
It
says one of two things, probably face-saving, or two, they're just suicidal.
Also, now there are talks, there's reports that the strikes are imminent against Iraq, Bahrain, and Kuwait at the same time. All right. We'll see if those also have very limited scope and effectiveness, similar to the one in Qatar. Okay. All right. Number 3 on our list here. Competent authority are the ones making the decisions. Number 1, the lawful people, the rightful people, empowered to do so. But then number 2, since we're taking action that could endanger human life, right? And the number 1 moral principle of a biblical worldview is the defense of life. And sometimes you have to take life to defend it, right? You want the police sniper to take out the guy who's got the gun to the bank teller's head, okay? You want him to pull his trigger before the criminal pulls his. Okay, sometimes you have to take life to save it. Okay, so does this authority, is it competent? Are we sure that if it is unleashed, for example, some of you have come to me in recent years and said, I understand, Steve, your case that the death penalty is biblical, and there is no biblical argument against it. However, I'm concerned about giving the current people running the government any more power over life and death, particularly since I know what they think of me and my life. You know what I've said when you've come to me with that? That's a pretty good argument, man. I don't have an argument against that. Okay? I mean, if your argument is, I don't want to give the death penalty to people to execute pedos who really would like to execute me for not being one, that's a pretty good argument. You guys got it. I don't really have an argument against that. You're arguing here just war. You're arguing competent authority. You're saying this is not competent authority, that these people aren't legit or cannot be morally legit. They may be lawfully legit, but not morally legit. They can't execute what they claim. Jimmy Carter trying to rescue the hostages in Iran, and it's a massive, disaster, for example. Okay. Joe Biden trying to, evacuate Afghanistan, and instead we left behind billions of dollars in munitions and some of our own people. Okay. That's kind of what we're getting to with competent authority, where even if you get through the first two, are the people in charge lawfully in charge? And number two, could they be trusted to pull this off given the extent of human life at stake? So I think given the level of operation that has been executed here and the precision of the operation, to me, this checks the competent authority box as well.
Well, there's already a Babylon Bee joke in there about federal judge says Trump has to rebuild the bomb sites. But again, number one, and buy-in, which I'm going to do again, is really important on this front. The level of imminence, because in a world that's getting smaller, if you have to act quickly, it's all the more important in this modern age that the president, as the executive and the commander-in-chief, has the ability to move quickly when he sees fit. A. B, in his very short speech that he made after this happened, again, I think it's very important that he had behind him not only the vice president, but the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense to show a level of combined
great point. That's a great point.
Authority.
Yep.
But beyond the imminence, and this is why it's so important, this goes to the gray area you spoke of before, Steve. Ultimately, if there's more than something that is imminent, it is Congress's duty in America to declare war. And there's a reason why that hasn't happened in a very long time, because we've liked to dance in gray area, real or imagined, for a very long time. So what we buy in about what's true on number one is very important in answering this.
Yes, this has been the strongest one so far, where I am absolutely a yes. And if we were having this conversation 7 months ago, it would not just be a no, but a hell no when it comes to competent authority, for obvious reasons with Joe Biden.
All right, so we're 3/5 of the way through.
There's seven.
There's seven, I'm sorry. So we're about halfway through. All right, and then we're going to get through the rest, and then we're going to quickly go through each of them about potential spillover actions should the law of unintended consequences rear its ugly head here. All right, we'll continue on here in just a moment. Stay tuned. In these unprecedented times, make sure, didn't hear that, do it again.
Oh, his microphone is messed up. Can you jiggle the cord a little bit?
Hello.
There it
is. Say it again.
Literally just smacked the microphone and it started working.
Again, these are, proven unprecedented times.
And the fonts.
You had to sit there and, like when you were a kid, hold the aluminum foil on the rabbit ears to get that thing to work.
Whatever works.
Yes. In these unprecedented times, make sure you've got a real estate agent you can trust to guide you through all the changes that have gone on since the last time we had a real estate market, which is about 6 years ago, frankly. All right. Where would you find such an agent? We made it easy for you. Just go to the website that is called literally realestateagentsitrust.com. And there you're going to find an agent whose track record of success has been verified. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. And they're going to be from the area you're in or you want to get to. So whether you want to get across the country, across town, ultimately what you want to do is get across the finish line of what can be a stressful process even in the greatest of circumstances. All right. So get yourself the right kind of agent, the kind of agent you're going to want to do business with forever, because of how good this experience was. Realestateagentsitrust.com is where you can go. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's get back to what we did to Iran over the weekend. And does it line up with our understanding of just war theory, a history of warfare in the Christian church, and whether or not it is it's equivalent, it's valid, other than self-defense. All right. So, Aaron, let's continue on. Number 4 is the right intention. All right. What are we doing this for? Empire cannot be, the growth of empire is not the right intention. For the glory of Rome, not the right intention. Not the right intention. Okay. So, and this is where a lot of debate rightfully is happening on our side right now. What is the right intention? Okay. So I don't believe, even if I shared the view, I would not believe, given how historically mercurial the Christian church has been, if you were to go back and tell Augustine, for example, since he is the progenitor of just war theory, not its sole architect, but its original source, if you were to go back and tell Augustine that the time would come that the most Christianized culture in the world would apply Genesis 12:3 as the basis for whether or not it was going to go to war with a country or not, he would look at you like, man, maybe Domitian missed one. Maybe we found the one Christian Nero should have put on a stake. What in the world are you talking about? This would have just been a foreign concept to him. Well, it's gospel to us. That's not saying Augustine was right, he was wrong. I point that out to say how much this has ebbed and flowed. Our conventional default settings on eschatology has ebbed and flowed throughout the history of the church. So I don't believe, even if I agreed with Rome, and I do actually agree with Genesis 12:3 to a point, not necessarily to the point that it is applied to a secular government to the last nth syllable, but if I would not think basing an entire foreign policy that risked regional global war is the right intention here. The right intention is Iran is a terrible regime that has demonstrated it likes murder and mayhem. So why in the world would he let them have weapons of mass destruction to that end? That, to me, seems like the right intention here. Okay, we now would say, 20 years ago, it sounded like a great idea to bring democracy to the Middle East, right? Now we would say, we dumb. Okay, all right. So now we would say, not the right intention. 20 years ago, it looked like a good intention. Okay, so right intention. Is the right intention box checked here, gentlemen? What do you think?
Yes, I believe so. They have demonstrated that they believe their own rhetoric, and to the extent that they are capable and able of carrying out actions that mirror that belief in their own rhetoric, why would they not then use that with the ultimate weapon? So yes, I think the intention is on here.
This is very much tied into number 1 for me, Steve. Earlier on, you on the show today, you mentioned I don't know what I don't know, but you have mentioned like you have a hope that within Iran, are there voices now, Gorbachev-like voices, potentially willing to say, well, yeah, I'm still Islamic, obviously, but I also don't have a death wish, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's important to know, and we're doing this theoretically, so that
That's all we can do. We're not in any situation room. We can't do anything factually.
So that we can apply it. So even though there's more Islamic countries than not that I think do wish America ill, at any given time, does this apply to say, you know what, there's an Islamic country over there, let's bomb it? No, that would be
That's
immoral.
Right. I agree. That's a great distinction you're drawing.
We need, ultimately specifics about this, and it's I'm just repeating myself, but these are intertwined for me. Are what we know about imminent threats and building towards a weapon of mass destruction are important in this equation.
All right. Next component, next criteria here. Number 5, probability of success. So we said we want this to be a very minimal strike. We do not want this to be a spillover situation. We do not want global regional war. We have a president that has, unlike all of his predecessors of the last 25 years, has been adamant about diminishing America's role in the world, even to the point of reevaluating our long-term relationship with NATO, okay, is given that, right? Because here's the thing. You're often better off, and I've said this before when friends of mine have run for office, and they've called me up or emailed me or texted me and say, hey, can I come to you if I need help? And I say, yes, but you need to understand, you're better off taking the advice you're paying for if it's bad than having me conflicting with the bad advice you're getting and being confused. You see what I'm saying? So I think that kind of applies here too. That even if the goal was a broader mission, we would be better off trying to do a broader mission unified than if we were really divided trying to do a narrowly scoped one. Because again, that's when agendas get involved. Okay, so there's things internal and external that can lead to the probability of success. All right, and I don't know how we couldn't possibly check this box in light of what we know right now. Thoughts?
I absolutely check it, and it's important to note here that probability of success isn't a certain number. It's not like a super majority. It's not 75%. It's just 51%. It's not. It's what's a number that makes sense relative to the other things we've talked about, the particular threat. I think even though as cool it is that they flew as many hours that they did, I think ultimately the probability of success for this military was very, very high, and I think it was considerably higher than Barack Obama ordering the SEAL Team 6 into Afghanistan to kill Osama bin Laden. But whatever that probability was, that was high enough too, relative to the need to take that man out. Yeah. So I think that's important. There's not one number that makes it, well, this is a good enough the probability might be 20%. It still might be enough relative to the threat being faced or the concern.
And somebody, I think, if the reports were accurate, who was weighing on this was Donald Trump himself. I saw a couple of reports saying that he was asking a lot whether or not these specific bombs, these MOPs that we dropped on the Fordo site, whether they were actually capable of penetrating as deep as needed. So he was doing this math as well.
Okay. Number 6, last resort. All right. Now, this is also where it can get very sketchy because this is all very subjective. Again, self-defense is off the table here because self-defense is in essence last resort. You defend yourself or you're done. Okay, so that's why it's also the penultimate. We're down towards the bottom of the list here because this is going to be amongst the sketchiest things to actually lay out and know for sure. And I don't know that we can possibly decide for certain whether or not to check this box because we just don't know. This is why competent authority, by the way, is before last resort. Because we're not sitting here in these situation rooms. We're not looking at this intel. We're not a member of the Iranian High Command or one of their atomic council. We don't know how far along they really were. We could not possibly know. We can all speculate. We can find things we agree with, or as Aaron, I think, rightly pointed out, suddenly in the middle of like, here's one we didn't know. Okay, well, yeah, that's great. Hey, did you know here's a new study, mass work? Come on, man. Okay. That being said, I'm inclined to think if we agree that it's a competent authority, then you're probably free to check the box last resort if you want, because you believe in the ones ultimately making the call on your behalf. Does that make sense? But if you don't want to check this box, given what we don't know, I don't blame you for either. I think this one is a real gray area. And you don't have to be 7 for 7, by the way, but you should at least be 5 out of 7.
I totally agree with you because for the sake of argument, let's say that Israel already did what it did. The United States is trying to find a way to make this the messaging palatable to do this, and you could use this if you're utterly cynical to convince people that it must be done but we've been misled, intentionally or not, about this kind of thing before. We have no definitives about what it was, and let's say for the sake of argument, Iran really is right in this moment 5 years away from an actual nuke. Then this is an entirely different conversation.
This one was pretty easy for me to check if we have made it through the other ones to this point, because in this particular, so if you have thoughts or questions about the other ones that we've talked about up to this point, then you're probably not going to answer this one in the affirmative. But if we have checked all of those other boxes, this one for me is pretty easy to check. I mean, how many more opportunities could we have given them to show that they're not just suicidal maniacs over there? How many more? I, in terms of this specific context in which we find ourselves in right now, I think it was pretty close to the last resort.
By the way, quick aside, Babylon Bee headline. Trump announces he has evidence Thomas Massie is only weeks away from acquiring nuclear weapons.
Yeah. That's way more than a joke right there.
That is brutal. All right, let's get to the last one. All right. Proportionality. All right. So are we going to devastate their civilians because they hit a military target, for example? In many respects, what Iran is trying to do in response to save face would actually be, in their limited capacity, an example of proportionality. They know if we carry multiples of dead servicemen out of a U.S. military base, they're going to be carrying multiples of dead members of the Iranian, whatever the Israelis have not killed, out of Tehran. They know this, right? So they know they have to respond in proportion, okay, in order to save face. They can't go overboard. They don't want to drag the U.S. into a larger war, okay? So proportionality here. Did we bomb Tehran because Iran had a nuclear program? Is that what we did?
No.
Did we even come close to a densely populated area because Iran had a nuclear program? No. Now, thank goodness this isn't Wuhan, where the Wuhan labs were in. I mean, it's real easy to say right now, boy, I wish you could go back and have bombed those labs before whatever leaked out of there got out and wrecked the world for 3 years. But Wuhan is also one of the most densely populated areas of the world. At least 11 million people live in that area. Not easy to do that. Not easy to execute that, right? But in this case, these are remote, mountainous regions. Proportionality was pretty simple to execute. It's not easy, but simple. Okay? So I think we can check the box here. Agreed?
Agreed. I mean, this is the Hiroshima and Nagasaki argument. It's still had to this day from people on the right and the left who have questions about whether it was ultimately proportional. But, in this case, I think it absolutely meets the test.
Objective was Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, so you bomb the nuclear program. So in this instance, yeah, it is proportional. And now Reuters is reporting, by the way, that Iran actually told the U.S. directly, telegraphed their attack directly hours before it took place today.
So let's go back to number one, Aaron. In fact, we could probably just have this entire conversation about what could potentially come in the future to number one, just cause, right? Because remember, if we don't get through number one, we don't debate the other six, okay? Regime change in Iran, is that a just cause for the United States of America?
For the United States? No.
Yes.
Yeah, no. I was trying to think of the way you were probably asking.
Are we saying that unconditionally? Like even if Iran invaded the United States, would we still say, we will decimate the hell out of you, and then we're just walking away? We're not here to do a replacement government, professional government. We're not here to do any of that. We're just taking the trash out to the curb, and then, it's your house. You clean it up after we're done. We're not Marshall planning this place. Even in that extreme scenario, would we still agree?
I think so.
I tend to agree. I tend to think a U.S. regime change policy is pretty close to an unconditional. Given our track record of success and lack thereof, I kind of think it's an unconditional, not a just cause for the U.S. government.
Well, you're begging the question, how good are we at even running our own regime, let alone somebody else's? So.
Guys, we can't get the federal judiciary under control, okay?
Yeah.
All right, we can't stop the Delaware governor from issuing an executive order to say we're gonna trans all the kids here, okay? We can't. We control every We have 6 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. We have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. We can't get the U.S. federal government under control. Yeah. All right, we can't successfully regime change from the last administration yet, 6 months into this term. So the idea that we're going to go to Tehran and do one, I kind of think that's a tap out.
Do you even empire, bro?
Exactly. Okay, we're not good at this. Okay. Now, again, I mean, if they wanted to take this to another level, and we had to go out over there and wipe them out, I'm fine doing that. And then we're not Marshall planning this. We're not bringing democracy to Iraq. We're not doing Iran. We're not doing any of that. We did our business. We got rid of the guys who did this to us, and now you guys, and we set an example for you. If whoever comes after these people wants to do what these guys did, you've been warned. So now you guys need to kind of figure out your own mess. We're going to go back and figure out ours. Fair?
Yeah.
All right. What about further understandings of Iran restarting a nuclear program? If there was more. Is this a reoccurring thing?
This is the sticky wicket here.
Yeah,
because basically what we have sent the message for, if there is not regime change, is that we're committed to every 10 years or so bombing Iran.
Yeah.
I'm laughing about it. It's because it sounds ridiculous, but that doesn't mean I'm in favor of the United States getting involved with regime change. It has to be the people. Has to be the people.
Thoughts? Would basically a reoccurring deterrent against Iranian nuclear proliferation be a just cause?
Yeah, you have to deal in the world as it is. I think that their level of malevolence is clear, and it might even be more clear if they're still stubborn about it after what just happened to them. So, yeah, that's possible.
I hope that you guys got a lot out of this thinking exercise. We brought something new and original to this discussion. We're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, and right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.